The sun was warm on my face, and the sound of waves crashing against the shore was oddly comforting. This small coastal town was supposed to be my fresh start, a place to escape the chaos of city life and focus on my work. But as I sat on my towel, sketchbook in hand, trying to capture the serenity of the beach, I heard laughter, loud, boisterous laughter, cutting through the calm like a knife. I looked up, annoyed. A group of 4 guys had set up a volleyball net just a few feet from where I was sitting, completely unaware of the rest of the world. Or maybe they were aware and just didn't care. One of them, a tall guy with sandy blonde hair and a devil-may-care grin, spotted me and waved. "Hey, mind if we play here?" I sighed, closing my sketchbook. "Do I have a choice?" He laughed, his voice warm and unbothered. "Not really. But I thought I'd ask." Before I could reply, another guy, this one darker, with intense blue eyes and a quiet demeanor, joined him. "Liam, leave her alone," he said, his tone softer. He nodded at me. "Sorry about him. We'll try to keep it down." Liam rolled his eyes. "Come on, Ethan, don't scare her off. She looks like she could use some fun." "I'm fine," I said, trying to sound polite. "Really?" As the game started, I couldn't help but watch. They moved with an easy camaraderie, laughing and teasing each other between serves. The third guy, Mason, was built like a tank but had a calm presence, and the fourth, Jackson, was pure energy, leaping and diving with abandon. Eventually, Jackson's dive sent the ball rolling toward me. He jogged over, grinning. "Nice reflexes," he said when I instinctively stopped it with my foot. I shrugged. "Years of practice avoiding chaos." "Chaos is half the fun," he replied, winking before returning to the game. By the time they finished, I was packing up to leave. But Liam called out, "Hey, we're having a bonfire tonight. You should come." I hesitated, but something about their easy energy was hard to resist. "Maybe," I said. Their smiles told me they already knew my answer. The bonfire crackled as sparks floated into the dark sky, mingling with the salty air. I stood on the edge of the gathering, unsure of why I'd agreed to come. This wasn't my scene. Small talk and loud laughter weren't my specialties. Yet here I was, clutching a cup of something vaguely fruity, my toes sinking into the cool sand. "Ava!" Liam's voice boomed over the chatter as he jogged toward me, his grin as bright as the fire. "You made it." I smiled awkwardly, brushing a stray strand of hair behind my ear. "Yeah, well, you were pretty persistent." "Persistent? That's just my natural charm." He winked, and I rolled my eyes. Before I could reply, Mason appeared at Liam's side, towering over both of us. His presence was steady, calming. "Hey," he said simply, offering me a small nod. "Hey," I replied, grateful for his quieter energy. "Liam, don't scare her off," Ethan said as he approached, holding a beer. He shot me a half smile, his blue eyes flicking over me with quiet curiosity. "We need at least one sane person here tonight." "Too late," Jackson chimed in, suddenly appearing behind me. "You're already here, Ava. No turning back now." I laughed despite myself, their banter easing some of my tension. They made it easy, like I'd always been part of their group. As the night wore on, I found myself seated on a driftwood log, surrounded by their laughter and stories. Liam's jokes were endless, but I noticed how he made sure everyone felt included. Ethan was quieter, his sarcasm subtle but sharp, often earning soft laughs from Mason. Jackson was pure energy, flitting between conversations and stunts, while Mason's deep chuckles acted as an anchor. At one point, Ethan turned to me, his expression thoughtful. "So, what brought you to our little town?" "Fresh start," I replied honestly. "I needed a change." "Don't we all?" he said, his voice low but sincere. I felt their eyes on me, their interest genuine, and something shifted. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel out of place. By the time I left, I couldn't deny it. I was drawn to all of them. Each of them had something different that tugged at me. And for the first time, I wondered if I'd gotten myself into more than I bargained for. A few days after the bonfire, My phone buzzed with a text from Liam. Liam, road trip this weekend. You in? I stared at the screen, hesitant. I just started settling into this town, into my own rhythm. But before I could overthink it, another text followed. Jackson, you'd be crazy to say no. We're fun. Promise. I laughed despite myself, their enthusiasm contagious. Against my better judgment, I replied. Okay, fine. Where are we going? That Saturday, we piled into Mason's old Jeep, a chaotic mix of duffel bags, snacks, and too much energy. Liam was in the passenger seat, controlling the music and belting out lyrics to every song, while Ethan quietly scrolled on his phone, occasionally throwing in a sarcastic comment. Jackson was sprawled next to me in the back seat, somehow managing to take up more space than seemed physically possible. Comfortable? I asked, shoving his leg away playfully. Not really, he replied with a grin. But sacrifices must be made. The destination was a hiking trail leading to a secluded waterfall, an hour's drive away. When we arrived, the scenery was breathtaking. Lush greenery surrounded a crystal-clear pool, the sound of rushing water drowning out everything else. Worth it, right? Liam asked, nudging me as we unpacked. Maybe, I teased, though I couldn't stop smiling. The hike was challenging but fun, filled with moments that made me laugh until my sides hurt. Jackson pretended to lead but got us lost twice, much to Ethan's annoyance. Mason offered me his hand over tricky terrain, his quiet strength reassuring. Liam told endless jokes to keep us distracted from the steep inclines. When we finally reached the waterfall, it was stunning. A cascade of water pouring into a serene pool, sunlight filtering through the trees. See, Jackson said, stripping off his shirt and diving in without hesitation. Told you it was worth it. The rest of us followed, splashing and laughing like kids. At one point, Liam swam over to me, his grin softening. Having fun. Surprisingly, yes, I admitted. His gaze lingered for a moment, his usual playfulness replaced by something more sincere. I felt a tug in my chest, and when I glanced around, I realized it wasn't just Liam who was looking at me differently. Mason's steady gaze met mine from across the pool. Ethan smiled faintly when our eyes met, and Jackson splashed water in my direction, his laughter echoing around us. I felt something shift in that moment, a connection I couldn't define but couldn't ignore. And for the first time, I wondered if I was falling for not just one of them, but all of them. The ride back from the waterfall was quieter, a stark contrast to the raucous energy that had filled the Jeep earlier. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the winding road. Everyone seemed lost in their own thoughts, the exhaustion of the day sinking in, or maybe it was something else entirely. I leaned my head against the window, stealing glances at them one by one. Jackson was half asleep next to me, his head tilted back with a faint smile on his lips. Liam hummed softly along to the radio, his usual energy tempered but not gone. Mason focused on the road, his hands gripping the steering wheel with his typical steadiness, while Ethan stared out the window, his expression unreadable. Something had shifted today, and I could feel it like a tangible weight in the air. When we finally pulled up to my house, Mason parked the car, and everyone piled out to stretch. Thanks for today, I said, turning to face them. It was incredible. Only the best for you, Ava, Liam said with a wink, earning a snort from Ethan. As I fumbled for my keys, Jackson suddenly spoke up. Hey, Ava, wait. I turned, surprised by the seriousness in his tone. He glanced at the others before stepping closer, his usual confidence faltering just a bit. Look, I don't know how to say this, so I'm just gonna say it. We all like you. I blinked, unsure I'd heard him right. What? You heard me, Jackson said, his grin returning. We all like you. Like you. Liam stepped forward, rubbing the back of his neck. It's true. I thought it was just me at first, but, well, apparently not. My heart raced as I looked at Ethan, who gave a small shrug. I wasn't going to say anything, but since we're doing this, yeah, I do too. Mason was the last to speak, his voice quiet but firm. We've talked about it, Ava. And as crazy as it sounds, we're okay with this. Sharing, I mean. If you're okay with it. I stared at them, my mind spinning. This was insane. Four incredible guys, all admitting their feelings for me, and they were okay with this? I don't know what to say, I stammered, my cheeks burning. Say you'll think about it, Jackson said, his grin softening. That's all we're asking. As they stood there, watching me with hope and patience, I realized something shocking. I was already falling for each of them in different ways. Okay, I whispered, my voice barely audible. I'll think about it. The smiles that spread across their faces made my heart ache with something I couldn't quite name. As they drove away, I stood on my porch, wondering how my life had gotten so wonderfully, beautifully complicated. The next week was a whirlwind. True to their word, Liam, Ethan, Mason, and Jackson gave me space to think about their confession, but their presence in my life only grew stronger. They took turns inviting me to spend time with them individually, and each day brought a new layer of connection that made my feelings even more confusing and undeniable. Liam's adventure. It started with Liam. One evening, he texted me, "You need a break. Meet me at the docks." When I arrived, he was waiting with 2 paddleboards and that irresistible grin of his. "Figured you could use some fun," he said, handing me a life jacket. "You sure about this?" I asked skeptically, eyeing the boards. "Positive. I'll even go slow for you," he teased, winking. To my surprise, I loved it. We paddled along the calm waters as the sunset bathed everything in golden light. Liam kept up a steady stream of jokes and playful banter, but when we stopped to rest, his tone softened. "You know, Ava," he said, dipping his hand in the water, "you make things brighter. We all feel it." My chest tightened, and for a moment, I couldn't speak. Ethan's quiet connection. The next day, Ethan invited me to a small cafe tucked away from the bustling boardwalk. He ordered tea, and we sat in a quiet corner surrounded by bookshelves. "This is my favorite spot," he said, running a finger along the edge of his cup. "It's where I think best." We spent hours talking, our conversation flowing easily from books to life to the intricacies of his thoughts. Ethan's sarcasm melted into something deeper, and his quiet intelligence drew me in like a magnet. At one point, he leaned forward, his blue eyes locking onto mine. "You're not like anyone I've ever met, Ava. You make me feel seen." Mason's steady comfort. Mason came by later in the week to help fix a broken step on my porch. He worked in calm silence, his presence grounding. "You don't have to do all this," I said, leaning against the doorway. He looked up, his hands steady on the hammer. "I like helping you." When he finished, we sat on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon. "You've got a way of pulling people in," he said softly. "You make me want to be better." Jackson's spontaneity. And then there was Jackson, who showed up at my door with a mischievous grin. "Pack a bag. We're going for a drive." Before I could protest, I was in his car, music blaring as he drove us to a cliff overlooking the ocean. We sat on the hood, watching the waves crash against the rocks. "You know why I like you, Ava?" he asked, his voice unusually serious. "Why?" I asked, my breath catching. "Because you don't try to be anyone but yourself. That's rare." Each of them brought something different into my life, and I found myself falling for all of them in ways I couldn't control. It was chaos, but it was beautiful chaos. And deep down, I was starting to realize that I didn't want to choose. The chaos of balancing 4 relationships was exhilarating and exhausting. Every moment with Liam, Ethan, Mason, and Jackson felt like stepping into a different world, each connection unique and irreplaceable. But as the days passed, the weight of my emotions, and the situation, began to sink in. It started innocently enough. Jackson showed up unannounced one afternoon, his usual mischievous grin lighting up my doorway. "Thought I'd take you out for ice cream," he said, dangling his car keys. We hadn't even made it out the door when Mason pulled up in his truck, holding a small bouquet of wildflowers. "Hey," he said, his steady presence calming the sudden tension. "I thought I'd stop by and see if you wanted to take a walk." I froze, my heart pounding as they both turned to look at me. "What's going on here?" Jackson asked, his grin faltering. Before I could respond, Liam's voice called out from the sidewalk. "Hey, Ava. Got a minute?" He jogged up, holding a takeaway bag from my favorite cafe. I wanted the ground to swallow me whole. The universe wasn't done with me yet, though. Ethan appeared moments later, holding a book. His brows furrowed when he saw the others. "Am I interrupting something?" The four of them stood there, the air thick with unspoken tension as their gazes flicked between each other. I opened my mouth to speak, but Liam beat me to it. "You're kidding, right?" he said, his tone sharp. "You didn't tell us?" "Tell you what?" Jackson asked, crossing his arms. "That she's seeing all of us," Mason said quietly, his voice calm but tinged with disappointment. Ethan sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. I should have seen this coming. The guilt hit me like a tidal wave. "Wait," I said, stepping forward. "I didn't mean for this to happen. I care about all of you." "That's the problem," Liam said, his jaw tight. "You can't have all of us, Ava." Jackson's expression softened, but there was hurt in his eyes. "Why didn't you just tell us?" "I didn't know how," I admitted, my voice trembling. "I didn't want to lose any of you." The silence was deafening, the weight of their emotions suffocating. Liam ran a hand through his hair and turned away. "We need to figure this out." As they walked away one by one, my chest ached with the fear that I might lose them all. I'd wanted to hold on to the beauty of what we had, but now, it felt like everything was crumbling. And for the first time, I wasn't sure how to fix it. The silence from all four of them was unbearable. Days turned into a week, and not one of them reached out. My phone sat untouched, my guilt gnawing at me with every passing hour. I couldn't blame them. I'd been selfish, letting my feelings for them grow without thinking about how it would all come crashing down. But I couldn't leave it like this. Finally, I sent a group text, my hands trembling as I typed. "We need to talk. Please come over tonight. All of you." It felt reckless, inviting them all at once, but I didn't see any other way. If there was a chance to fix this, to explain myself, I had to take it. That evening, they arrived one by one, the tension palpable. Liam leaned against the wall, his arms crossed, his usual smile absent. Ethan sat on the armrest of the couch, his gaze sharp and guarded. Mason stood near the window, his hands in his pockets, while Jackson paced, the most visibly agitated of the group. "I'm sorry," I began, my voice breaking the silence. "I didn't mean for things to get so complicated. I didn't plan for this to happen." "You didn't plan to fall for all of us?" Liam asked, his tone tinged with sarcasm. "No," I said quickly, meeting his eyes. "But I did. And I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't want to hurt any of you." Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Ava, you had to know this couldn't last. You can't have all of us." "I know," I said, my voice trembling. "But I care about each of you. You all bring something different into my life, and I didn't want to lose that." Mason spoke next, his voice steady but firm. "We're not saying we don't care about you too. But it's not fair to anyone." Jackson stopped pacing, his hands on his hips. "So what are you saying? You want us to just share?" The room fell silent, their eyes fixed on me. My cheeks burned, and my heart pounded. "I don't know what I'm saying," I admitted. "But I do know I don't want to lose any of you. I know it's selfish, but it's the truth." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, to my surprise, Liam chuckled, shaking his head. "This is insane." Jackson smirked. "Completely insane." Ethan raised an eyebrow, his lips quirking into a faint smile. "But we've never exactly been normal, have we?" Mason's steady voice cut through the tension. "Maybe we need to decide if this is something we're all willing to figure out together." Hope flickered in my chest as I looked at them, their expressions softening. The chaos wasn't over, but maybe, just maybe, There was a way forward. Together. The tension in the room shifted, softening into something that felt fragile but hopeful. Liam rubbed the back of his neck, his usual confident demeanor replaced with something more thoughtful. "All right," he said finally, glancing at the others. "Let's lay it out. If we're going to figure this out, we need to be honest. No games, no guessing." Ethan crossed his arms, leaning back against the armrest. "That's easier said than done. This isn't exactly a normal situation. Nothing about us has ever been normal," Jackson shot back with a grin, though there was a nervous edge to it. Mason cleared his throat, stepping forward. His calm presence grounded the room. "Before we go any further, Ava, are you sure this is what you want? Us, all of us, in this unconventional way." The weight of their gazes pressed on me, and I swallowed hard. "I know how crazy it sounds, but yes. I care about all of you in different ways. You each bring something unique into my life, and I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose you." Liam let out a low whistle, shaking his head. "Well, if nothing else, she's honest." Jackson laughed, but it wasn't mocking. "You've got guts, I'll give you that." Ethan's sharp eyes softened, and he leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Okay, let's say we try this. How does it even work? What are the rules?" The room fell quiet again, the enormity of the situation settling over us. Finally, Mason spoke, his voice steady. "We take it one step at a time. We talk, we're honest, and if it doesn't work, we walk away before anyone gets hurt. And no jealousy," Jackson added, pointing a finger at the others. "That's the only way this works." Liam smirked. "Speak for yourself. I'll win her over eventually." I rolled my eyes, but I couldn't help laughing. "This isn't a competition, Liam." "Isn't it?" he teased, his grin returning. Ethan shook his head but smiled faintly. "All right. We'll try. But if this starts to go south, we'll deal with it," Mason finished, his gaze steady on me. "Together." As I looked at each of them, I felt the knots in my chest loosen. This was uncharted territory, messy and complicated, but for the first time, I felt like we had a chance. The chaos wasn't over, but now, it felt like something worth fighting for. The days that followed were a whirlwind of awkward adjustments and unexpected moments of clarity. Navigating a relationship with 4 people at once was unlike anything I'd experienced, and while it wasn't without its challenges, there was a strange beauty in the chaos. Liam was the first to test the waters. He showed up at my house one evening with a pizza box in one hand and a playful grin. "Figured you could use some carbs and charm," he said, winking as he walked in uninvited. We spent the evening on my couch, laughing over cheesy rom-coms and bickering about pineapple on pizza. It was easy with Liam, like we'd been doing this for years. As the night wound down, he leaned in, brushing a stray strand of hair from my face. "You know," he said softly, his usual bravado giving way to something more vulnerable. "I wasn't sure about this at first. But I can't stop thinking about you, Ava." His kiss was soft and lingering, and for a moment, the rest of the world fell away. 2 days later, it was Ethan's turn. He invited me to a quiet bookshop tucked away in the heart of town, the smell of aged paper and coffee creating a cocoon of calm. "I thought you'd like this place," he said, leading me to a corner table. "It's where I come when I need to think." We spent hours there, talking about everything from our favorite authors to the complexities of relationships. When we stepped outside, the evening air cool against our skin, he hesitated before speaking. "I've never done anything like this before," he admitted, his voice low. "But with you, I want to try." His kiss was hesitant but meaningful, his hand brushing mine like he was afraid to scare me away. Jackson, of course, brought his usual flair for spontaneity. He whisked me away for an impromptu road trip, blasting music and laughing as we sang off-key. When we stopped at a scenic overlook, he turned to me, his grin fading into something more serious. "You make me feel alive, Ava," he said, his voice uncharacteristically quiet. "And that scares the hell out of me." His kiss was passionate and urgent, like he couldn't hold back anymore. Mason was the last, and perhaps the most grounding. He invited me to his place for dinner, where he cooked a meal that could rival any five-star restaurant. "You deserve to be taken care of," he said simply, his deep voice resonating in the small kitchen. As we sat on his porch afterward, watching the stars, he reached for my hand. "I don't know where this will lead, but I'm all in. For you." His kiss was steady and reassuring, a promise of stability in the chaos. Each moment with them was different, and yet each one felt right in its own way. It was unconventional, messy, and far from perfect, but for the first time, I realized that love didn't have to fit into a single box. The weeks turned into months, and the chaos I'd once feared became my new normal. The balance wasn't always easy. There were disagreements, misunderstandings, and moments of jealousy. But the one thing that remained constant was our commitment to making it work. Liam, ever the charmer, made it his mission to bring laughter to even the tensest moments. One evening, after a minor spat between Ethan and Jackson over who would get to take me out on a Friday, Liam walked into the room wearing an oversized chef's hat and holding a tray of burned cookies. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "I have solved the issue. A baking contest. Winner gets Ava for the night." The cookies were inedible, but the laughter that followed broke the tension, and the night ended with all of us piled onto the couch watching a movie. Ethan, ever the thinker, brought a sense of quiet depth to our dynamic. One night, after the others had gone home, he stayed behind, helping me organize my small library. "You're too good for this world, you know," he said softly, running his fingers over the spines of my books. "And you think too much," I teased, though my heart warmed at his words. Jackson kept the spontaneity alive, dragging us into adventures we'd never have planned. From midnight beach swims to karaoke nights at the local bar, he reminded us to let loose and live in the moment. "Life's too short to take seriously," he said once, pulling me into a spontaneous dance under the stars. Mason, as always, was the anchor. When things felt overwhelming, he was there, his steady presence a reminder that love didn't have to be chaotic to be real. One evening, as we sat on his porch sipping tea, he said, "You're the glue, Ava. Without you, none of this works." By the time we reached 6 months together, the initial uncertainty had faded into something deeper, something that felt like family. Each of them brought something different into my life, and together, they made me feel whole in a way I'd never imagined. It wasn't traditional. It wasn't what most people would call normal. But it was ours. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. Love, I realized, wasn't about fitting into a box. It was about finding people who saw every messy, complicated part of you and chose to stay anyway. And with Liam, Ethan, Jackson, and Mason, I had found that in ways I never thought possible. The chaos wasn't over, it never would be, but now, I welcomed it. Because love, as wild and unconventional as it could be, was worth every moment.